It's the age-old question, Jason. Did the refs screw Cleveland again? Well, we're going to dive into that and much more on today's Ultimate Cavaliers show.
Donovan Mitchell missed game 4. Can he really come back for game 5? We'll talk about it.
We got a lot to break down, and it starts right now on the Ultimate Cavaliers show. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Mikey McNuggets, Jason Lloyd, as always, on the Ultimate Cavaliers show. The Cavs trail now 3-1 in the series after a 7-point loss to the Boston Celtics in front of a crazy Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse crowd and LeBron James on Monday night, Jason. And now we are sitting here figuring out how the Cavs can either salvage their season or what their offseason plans are. But before we dive into some of the things the Cavs did well and didn't do well last night, let's talk about the elephant in the room that was actually addressed for the first time by JB Bickerstaff and Darius Garland after the game. I put some of their tweets up or their comments up just to give everyone a preface, but the elephant in the room is the referees. On the night, the Cavs were called for 17 fouls. Excuse me. Boston was called for 12. The Celtics took 24 free throws. The Cavs took 5. JB Bickerstaff afterwards was asked about the referees. He said, quote, "I'll be honest, I was disappointed with the way the whistle blew tonight. I thought we deserved much better." Darius Garland also asked about it. Darius said, quote, 7 free throws with 2 techs in a 48-minute game. That's tough. This is our second time in the playoffs this year with less than 10 free throws. It's ridiculous. And even Dan Gilbert weighed in on it, Jason. I'm not sure you saw this and if you could pick up on the innuendo.
Yeah.
But Dan Gilbert said, "Hey, Cleveland, I thought our guys fought hard tonight, especially without 2 of our best players. If there's one thing we have learned, it's that you have to work hard 24/7, if you know what I mean, to win in this league. Let's go get game 5 and bring this back to Cleveland." Nice little homage from Dan Gilbert chiming in. But Jason, I know I don't like to be blame the ref guy. I know that's not necessarily your mantra, but I do feel like it's worth addressing here because we were both in attendance, and it certainly seemed like the Cavs did not get a favorable whistle last night.
No, I felt like there was multiple plays at the rim that could have been fouls that weren't. Evan got whacked, I know, early on where he was looking around like, "Are you kidding me?" And Darius got hit a couple times, I felt like, going to the rim. No, I am not ever, very, very rarely do I ever say, "Boy, I thought the refs really screwed him." Last night, I did feel like the refs did kind of screw the Cavs. Now, I don't think it has anything to do with market size. I know that's a big thing going around with Rick Carlisle talk about Indiana. Guys, the NBA has gone out of its way to refigure free agency and the collective bargaining agreement to prevent super teams and to give everybody to level the field and to bring parity out. And some of the best teams in the league are small market teams. If you look at Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver, I'll even put the Cavs in there. Like, this is not about a big market versus small market. I think that's silly. That's childish. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Like, just because the Cavs got a bad whistle last night does not mean they're out for the bigger market and they're trying to advance Boston because Boston's the bigger market. Cavs got a bad whistle because they got a bad whistle, and it happens. It happens sometimes. And I don't know if it's necessarily more complicated than the fact that Boston has more star players than Cleveland does. The Cavs aren't going to get the benefit of the doubt on a lot of those calls. And, you know, I don't know that it's really more complicated than that. But to bring in market size to it, I just think is silly and foolish.
Yeah, I don't think market size has a ton to do with it. We've seen games where the Cavs have certainly gotten a favorable whistle. We've seen games where Indiana in this Knicks series has gotten a favorable whistle. You have 2 mid-major teams playing in the Western Conference Finals against each other. 3 of the 4 teams in the West are mid-sized markets per se. Dallas is a major market. But if you look at the stats from last night, Jason, 24/7 was the free throw discrepancy. Like I mentioned, 17 fouls on Cleveland, only 12 against Boston. A couple things I want to point out that may give a little more context to the free throw discrepancy. Now, before I say any of this, I am on the record saying I did not think the Cavs got a favorable whistle. So let me just preface all that with this. The Cavs took 48 threes last night. Boston took 32. When you attack and you drive, you're technically and commonly going to draw more fouls, right?
Yeah.
Boston took fewer threes. They drove the rim more. They got to the paint. And they have bigger bodies who are more physical than some of the Cavs players. The Cavs took 48 threes. When you shoot almost 50 threes and more than half of your field goal attempts come from beyond the arc, you're not going to take a ton of free throws. However, according to NBA.com, the Cavs took 35 shots within 10 feet of the rim last night. Boston only had 28. So it wasn't like there was a ton of variance in terms of the shots around the rim where Boston was getting called or being granted free throws for. Cleveland actually took more shots in an area where fouls are typically drawn. But I guess my big takeaway and my big issue from this whole refereeing debacle that was last night is we spent all season long talking about how Evan Mobley doesn't go up strong enough and how Darius Garland's scared of contact, right? I've said it 100 times. Well, if we know that's how those two play, I can't really all of a sudden, well, they're shying away from contact and they're still going to get a whistle. Those two don't go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the refs did Cleveland any favors last night because they certainly did not. The whole tripping foul on Jaylen Brown that they reviewed and still called a common foul, I thought was an atrocity. That should have been flagging a run. I thought there were multiple occasions where Cleveland should have been on the free throw line, attempting free throws that did not go their way. Sam Merrill at the end of the third quarter should have had 3 free throw attempts. I understand all that. But if we're going to say all season for 92 games up before last night, hey, the Cavs are kind of soft. They go in weak. They don't finish strong. Well, then we can't argue when they don't get foul calls for going up soft and weak. Those two don't go hand in hand. So you have to kind of pick a lane here. It's either all the refs' fault or everything you said for the 92 games leading up to last night is irrelevant. You can't have it both ways.
That's fair, but I did see instances. I should have pulled the clip of Evan going strong and getting hit and losing the ball and nothing, and him looking around going, "Are you kidding me?" And the same with Darius going to the rim, getting hit, and no call. And
they were bad last night. I do want to make sure that's clear. I'm just saying, big picture.
Yeah,
you can't have it both ways. But last night the refs were not very good, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the Cavs, I don't know. They won one first round series, and I don't know that without Donovan out there, I don't know that they have the star power that's going to get the whistles. And you may not like that answer. I don't blame you if you don't like that answer, but that's the way the league's been called for the last 40 years, is the stars get the calls. Yeah. And the Cavs don't have that massive star power, particularly when Donovan's out.
There was some ticky-tack stuff, and then we'll move on from the refs. I don't want to spend too much time, Jason. We know at the end of the day, the refs aren't what cost a team a game, and it's not what won a team a game. The way the Cavs closed the second and third quarters is eventually what actually lost in the game, not the discrepancy in foul calls. But it's just the inconsistency. And there's one play that really sticks out in my mind in the fourth quarter. Max Strus was guarding Jaylen Brown. It was Max Strus' 5th foul. And as Jaylen Brown takes a step back, Max Strus' hand comes and he almost tickles his tummy a little bit. Yeah. Certain circumstances, that could be a much anticipated move. In other circumstances last night, it's a no big deal whatsoever. And they called it a foul. And then there's contact on the other end that's more significant to the outcome of the play than a little tickle on the tummy. And it's not being called. So the inconsistency what drives me crazy. I just wish, and it's an imperfect science. Being a referee in any sport is beyond difficult when you have athletes of this caliber moving as fast as they are. And when you go and look at replay, I feel like it almost makes it worse because you see everything in slow motion, and you could readjust and try to reconfigure the call in your mind. I just want it to be consistent. If it's a foul on one end, it should be a foul on both ends. It doesn't matter if it's Sam Merrill or Jayson Tatum, frankly. A foul's a foul. Right. And if you call it, you should call it the whole game. So that's kind of my beef with what happened last night. I didn't love it. I don't think it's the reason the Cavs lost, but they certainly didn't get any favors, especially in front of their home crowd and their home fans, where you would expect to have at least, if not a favorable whistle, a fair whistle. I didn't think last night was frankly that fair.
I agree with you.
All right, let's move on. Jason, after a quick word from FanDuel, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Cavs played without Donovan Mitchell in Game 4 last night. His status for Game 5 and beyond still up in the air. According to Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com and some other outlets, Mitchell suffered a calf strain in the closing minutes of Game 3. He finished the game, came out with a minute 13 left, and said immediately something felt wrong. He did not suit up in game 4. And Jason, do you have any update on his status potentially for game 5 and beyond?
No, I mean, I don't see how he's going to be ready to play. Typically, you measure calf injuries in weeks, not days. He told me last night after the game that he was dragging his leg up and down the floor in the fourth quarter of game 4. I'm sorry, game 3. So, you know, I mean, obviously he's going to do everything he can to play. Obviously he wants to hold out some hope, but I also think in the back of his head, he's also pretty realistic. He knows, I mean, you know, Giannis missed the entire Bucks postseason, which consisted of 1 round because of a calf strain. And Kristaps Porzingis has missed the last, I think it was about 2 weeks with the calf strain. And he's just now starting to do some on-court activities, but he's still a ways away. He's not probably going to play in this series at all, even if it extends beyond tomorrow. So, I mean, that just gives you some sort of an idea. I mean, I think Cavs are, you know, 3-4 week injury minimum. And if you aren't careful with it, that can lead to an Achilles, which is even worse. So you really have to be careful with these things. So I don't think he'll be out there. That's just my opinion. That's not sourced at all. That's just looking at the history of calf injuries and how these things go. He's going to do everything he can to play. Obviously, it's an elimination game, but I don't expect to see him out there.
Donovan Mitchell's a warrior, and we've seen him time in and time out this season, Jason, play through some pretty gruesome stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the severity of the knee injury, which he has been battling through now for the better part of 2 months. I go back to the Kevin Durant calf strain, and this is why I don't think he'll play in game 5. Right before he tore his Achilles against Toronto in the, was that 2019 NBA Finals, 2018, whatever that was.
19.
He had a calf strain, and he took, I think it was 2 weeks off, and then he rushed back isn't the right word, but he felt good enough, and he was going to try playing on a minutes restriction because it was the finals. And he said, I have to be out there with my team. And I don't remember the exact details. Don't quote me on this, but there was the whole, should he play? Shouldn't he play? The trainers wanted to give him a few more days off. KD said, no, it's the finals. I'm going to play. And next thing you know, he tears his Achilles and misses an entire season. Calf strains are no joke. There are certain injuries, you know, you roll an ankle, you can play through it. You can tweak a hammy, probably not, quad, whatever. We have not seen a good track record of guys having a calf strain and finding a way to play through it with the results being good. And also, another thing to consider, it's the same leg as the knee injury. It's his left leg.
Right.
We already saw his explosiveness decline a bit due to the knee injury. Well, you jump with your calves. And how effective, frankly, could Donovan Mitchell be on a bum knee and a bum calf on his takeoff leg? He's a righty, so his left leg's his takeoff leg. When he's already struggling, and he's played tremendous this series. I'm not saying he's struggling from like an production standpoint, but just an ability to create space standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, he's taken a ton of step back jumpers, which he's been hitting. He's shooting 53.1% from 3 this series, and Boston's been totally fine giving him these step back jumpers. He's making them with a bum knee, Jason. I just don't know how effective he can be with a bum knee and a bum calf, and with the impending risk of tearing your Achilles or creating further damage to yourself right before the offseason. I would normally say in a playoff series, the reward always outweighs the risk. But down 3-1, that's a really difficult predicament for Donovan and the Cavs to be in right now.
Yeah, I asked him if he felt the knee led to the calf, and he said no, he didn't want to say that. But I mean, you at least have to point it out. It is the same leg, and he's been doing this since the All-Star break. Really, he's been fighting this since the All-Star break. And then obviously his minutes go up in the postseason because of what's at stake. So he's playing heavy minutes on a bad knee. I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that one may have contributed to the other. I think it's certainly fair to at least pose the question. And it's unfortunate. And he's got to look at, everybody knows his contract situation. He's got 1 guaranteed year left. You know, if it was another Durant situation, he rushes back and then damages the Achilles, and now he's out all next year, you know, that affects his contract status going into free agency. So I just think you have to be smart about these things. I know he's going to try and play. I know he's going to do everything he can. I was actually surprised that he was at the arena as long as he was last night. I was kind of lingering, trying to get him, thinking that he would, when you're in street clothes, usually you leave quick. You're out of there fast. When you don't have any reason to, you know, you're not showering after the game or icing down or anything like that. but he was there quite a while after the game. I can only assume getting treatment on the calf. Like it's one of those things where it's around the clock treatment, trying to get him ready to go. But I just looking at this logically and realistically and taking the emotion out of it, I just don't see how he can go.
I want to give Donovan credit too. Despite being in street clothes on the bench yesterday, he did not sit down for much of the game. He was in full coach mode, and I'm not sure he gets a paycheck for being an assistant coach, but he certainly was doing everything he could to encourage his guys on the sideline. And as you were talking about his contract situation in his future, it made me think of Tristan McKenzie real quick. And I know it's not apples to apples, but McKenzie was minutes away from signing his extension, has the elbow injury, decides to do rehab, hasn't come back, hasn't been the same Tristan McKenzie yet. And you look at these athletes who are on the precipice and verge of signing these life-changing deals. And Donovan already has a ton of money, but this is another $200 million contract.
Yeah.
You know, when that's, you said it on the show today, when you have $200 million at your feet, you pick it up.
Bend over.
Knowing the injury potential of trying to play through it, God forbid he plays in game 5, tears his Achilles, he's going to miss all of next season. And then what's his contract going to look like at that point? The Cavs may still give him the extension because of who he is and his track record, but that's up in the air. So I just think Donovan, unfortunately, will most likely not play again in this postseason, barring the Cavs going on some kind of unprecedented run, knocking off the Celtics and taking whoever they play in the Eastern Conference Finals to 5 or 6 games. That's more realistic for a timeline for a Mitchell return.
Yeah, and I wrote today in The Athletic, it's very possible he's already played his last game for the Cavs, which is jarring when you think about it. I do think he'll sign the extension. I think he should sign the extension, partly for the reasons we've been talking about here for the last 5 minutes. When you've got injuries like this, probably, I mean, they're non-surgical injuries. Probably, I'd imagine the knee, just a rest thing. He just needs to rest the knee over a long summer. And obviously the calf, it's not like it's surgery needed. So these should be relatively minor injuries in the long haul. But still, when you're dealing with injuries like this and you've got a $200 million bag sitting in front of you, bend over and pick it up. Just sign the contract, sign it this summer, and worry about your future, where you want to play down the road. You're not necessarily guaranteeing yourself to 3 or 4 more years in Cleveland. You're guaranteeing yourself to 1 more year, and then you can sort of navigate your future plans beyond that at that point.
All right, Jason, before we get to our next topic, I want to say we appreciate everyone who has tuned into the Ultimate Cavs show over the last couple of months as we have launched this thing from nothing and turned it into a monster. If you think Donovan Mitchell is going to re-sign with the Cavs this summer, put a 1 in the chat. If you think he has played his last game as a Cav, give us a 2 in the chat, and we will go through some of those towards the end of the show. Jason, a big storyline in Game 4, despite the loss for Cleveland, was the emergence and the stepping upness, which is a terrible word, my bad. But is Darius Garland and Max Strus kind of stepping up and doing things in Game 4 we hadn't seen them do previously, not just in this series, but in the entire postseason? Do you want to start with Strus or Garland? I'll give you a dealer's choice.
Strus.
Let's start with Strus, Jason. I got a video here of all Strus's threes, and I'm just going to let this play. Tell me if you notice any commonalities between Strus's 5 first-half threes. I'm just going to keep talking through this. You stop me.
Man, I suck at this.
You see my tweet earlier today?
No, I didn't.
So these are all 5 of his first-half threes. He started the game 5 for 5. He ended the game 5 for 9. This is a beautiful little out-of-bounds play the Cavs drew up, or I call it out of bounds. It was to start the second quarter. But a little screen the screener to get Strus open in the corner. But he was on fire early, opened up a ton of offense for the Cavs. Boston did a better job in the second half, negating some of these open looks. But all 5 of his threes, and really 4 of the 5 more than 5 of 5, but it's really 4.5.
They're all catch and shoots.
That is the correct answer, Jason. I'm going to play this again. We talked about this on the show before Game 2 and Game 3, how Strus has kind of been put in the corner as a standstill shooter this year for the Cavs and their pick-and-roll heavy offense. And when they are running sets for him on the weak side, he's really more of a decoy than a focal point of the offense. In Miami, they were running sets like you're watching right here to get him open, catch and shoot. In rhythm catch and shoots are Max Strus's bread and butter. And I haven't think the Cavs have done a good enough job throughout the course of this season, not just the playoffs, but the entire season, at utilizing what he does best as a scorer on the basketball court. And I'm not sure if it's because Donovan Mitchell wasn't playing last night. It's partly because the Cavs got out in transition and ran, but they did some things last night involving Max Strus and getting him going early that I hadn't seen yet. As a shooter, the first one goes in, it opens up the entire confidence wave and he was clearly feeling it in the first half. That one he dribbled into, it wasn't a catch and shoot. It was a catch, one dribble pull. But Jason, I want to see more of this in game 5 and hopefully game 6 and 7, because this is the best version of Max Strus. And once Boston made the adjustments, Cleveland never counter-adjusted. They'll have a whole day and a half to figure out how to get him open again. But that was the best version of Max Strus. And I don't think it's a coincidence that 4.5 of the 5 threes he made in the first half all came off the stuff he did best in Miami before he made it to Cleveland.
Oh, playing with Donovan should not prevent that from happening.
I agree.
Like, he should still be able to play that way even when Donovan's on the floor. I do think that we've talked about this quite a few times already, but I think it's worth repeating now because Donovan's out and you saw how well they played without him. When he's on the floor, it was like this way when LeBron was here. You have to do it. You do it LeBron's way, and LeBron's way is stand in the corner and wait for the ball, and he's going to deliver it to you, and you better make the shot. And I don't know that necessarily Donovan's way is the same, but there is a certain way that you play with a superstar, and it doesn't necessarily play to the strengths of everybody else on the floor. You're sort of playing to his strengths and the game that he wants to play. And so when you see guys, when we talk about like, man, Donovan doesn't have any help out there and Donovan's doing it all alone, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I think that plays into it, because I saw it with LeBron in 2018 where he had to do it all by himself and there was no help around him really. Even guys like Kyle Korver that should have been more helpful to him, not maybe weren't as useful pieces, and Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood and these guys who weren't used to the LeBron way and playing that way.
Yeah.
Kevin Love and J.R. Smith had 4 years of playing that way. 4 years of playing that way. So they were a little bit more accustomed to it. And Jay Crowder could not adjust to that style at all. Jay was terrible when he was here, and Jay's a very good NBA player. He just didn't fit playing alongside LeBron. And I just wonder sometimes with Donovan if it's a little bit of the same thing of you play a certain way when you're playing alongside a superstar, and some guys it fits better than it does with others. And then when you remove that piece, you saw how well Strus played last night, how Darius shot it later on in the game, or played, I should say, all the way around. But it's a complicated conversation because Donovan and Darius, I thought last year played fine together. This year it's been a lot clunkier. Some of Donovan's best games, though, have been when Darius wasn't out there. His 71-point game was a game Darius missed. So there's a lot of nuance to this. And I don't think it's fair to declare, see, Darius is better without Donovan on the floor, because last year we didn't say that. Last year we didn't have that discussion. This year we are saying that. But there's evidence going both ways on that. And the same with Donovan. I don't know. Maybe I just talked in circles for the last 2.5 minutes, but I think it's interesting that some of these guys that haven't done anything all series long, maybe it's just, regression to the mean, and it was bound to happen at some point that Max Strus is going to get hot and start making some shots in these playoffs, because he had been so bad from 3 that he was due to make a few. And luckily they all came, in the first half, and the Cavs really needed him to stay within stride of Boston. But there's just a different way of playing when you're playing alongside a superstar and when you're not.
I think a lot of what you said is right. It's a make or miss league. We can only say it so many times. And Max Strus has had a couple of those same looks earlier in the series and just missed them.
Yep.
He had a couple of those same looks against Orlando and just missed them.
Yep.
He had game, and I go back to the Mavericks game where he hit the game winner on that 59-foot buzzer beater. He had all 5 of his threes in the last 4 minutes of the game. He was quiet, then finishes with 15 points on 5 threes because he just goes supernova. He's a guy that I think you have to get established early to get his confidence up. And even though he plays with the bravado, it's the shooter's mentality. I can't speak to shooting in the NBA, but I can speak as a shooter. You see 1 or 2 go in, your whole game changes. It looks like you're throwing a beach ball into the ocean at that point. Yep. And last night that happened with Max Strus. And I think with the Donovan part of it, and I'll show you some Darius clips in a sec, Jason, the Donovan part is just he has the ball, and your best offense is when he has the ball. Whatever he's doing, you are better with Donovan having the ball than you are with anyone else on the court doing anything. Donovan with the ball in his hands is your best bet to get a good look. And when he has the ball, he's not a traditional point guard. He thinks score first. He's a really willing and good passer, but he's a score first guy. So on the backside action, well, Donovan could be patient enough to wait for Strus to come off. He's also reading his defender, who, if he's not at the perfect angle, he has capability of blowing by him, getting to the cup, and next thing you know, that's a layup for the Cavs. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Donovan's their best player. You play through him, but I'm not surprised that last night Certain guys were able to get off certain things they hadn't when Donovan's not on the court. And Darius is no exception. I'm going to show you a couple of Darius plays here. And Jason, a lot of this stuff is stuff we talked about versus Orlando. It's a lot of stuff we talked about earlier in the series against Boston. It comes down to Darius being aggressive enough and confident enough to take some of these shots against drop coverage. Last night he made them and goes off for 30 points. Let's go through a couple of these. Boston was in drop coverage all night long. And Al Horford, they are conceding every switch on Al Horford with whoever he's guarding. And that is way too much space to leave Darius Garland on 39-year-old Al Horford at this stage of his career. Last night he steps up and shoots, makes that shot. I'll show you another three in a sec where he missed it. But that's the right play 100 out of 100 times.
Yeah.
That's how you score 30 points. You take and make those kind of shots. Another play against drop coverage. Al Horford cannot stay in front of Darius Garland. I cannot emphasize that. I cannot repeat that enough. There is no scenario where Al Horford, with that much space for Darius Garland to get ahead of steam, can stay in front and prevent Darius from getting an open look, whether it's a pull-up jump shot, whether it's a floater, whether it's a three. That is the matchup the Cavs have been attacking all series long. And last night, Darius, for whatever reason, felt more comfortable attacking the matchup, and he made him pay. And he made 12 shots last night. It took 27, but that's the aggression you need from Darius. Another play, he ends up missing this shot. But look how far Luke Cornett, and I'll pause it again in a sec. Look how far Luke Cornett's playing back on this. Now, I'm going to pause it real quick, even though it's freeze-framed. Tristan Thompson's in the game there. So that's not Evan Mobley. So they're saying, Tristan, we know for damn sure you ain't going to shoot the ball. So we're going to sit at the free throw line. Luke Cornett is literally, his heels are on the free throw line. That is 6 feet of space. If Darius was standing at the top of the key, he's 3 feet behind. Darius misses this shot. That is a shot he has to take 100 out of 100 times. You're not going to get a better shot in a possession than a wide open Darius 3. Now he's leaning forward a little bit. His mechanics weren't perfect here. Would rather him actually plant his feet and shoot, Jason.
He had plenty of space and time.
What do you say?
He had plenty of space and time to set his feet.
Exactly. But that is a situation where Darius is reading the defense in real time. And I'm going to pause it again when it freeze frames. Like when he catches it right here, that's Drew Holiday trailing him. He's stepping, turning, and shooting in one motion. That is the right basketball play. Sometimes it's the process. It's not the results. You're not going to make every shot. If guys made every shot, we'd be scoring 300 points a game. It's the process over the results. And last night, Darius was processing the right for information, and he had his best game of the series. Later in the game, Cornett again in drop coverage. I'm going to spot shadow Cornett for you. Watch him backpedaling like he's stepping on ice here, Jason. Darius has him in a torture chamber. It's like Fred Flintstone. Oh, what are you going to do? Hits the mid-range. That's exactly the right read once again, whether he's playing drop for three, whether he's playing drop. He blew past Horford earlier. He gets Cornett in a backpedal here. Like, it's the right play. And even when they decided to drop, he wasn't being predictable. He's going to deny the screen here, Jason, and blow by Horford. Once again, Al Horford has a 0.0% chance of staying in front of Darius Garland, or at least in theory should have a 0.0% chance of staying in front of Darius Garland. He denies the screen with Sam Hauser. Horford's already shading over to his left, expecting the drop. He says, all right, I see you cheating. I'm going to go the other way. Darius has his flaws. He is inconsistent. You see this, and it drives you batshit crazy because you don't see it every night. But these are the little things in Darius Garland's game, Jason, that make you believe and remind you of who he was as a player before the inconsistencies this year. And we'll talk about Darius and his future with the team, with his fit with Donovan, plenty of time in the offseason. But last night when the Cavs needed it most, when they needed some guy to step up, it was Max Strus. Caris Levert did a lot of similar things to Darius Garland. There was no point in showing you those clips too because it was all essentially the same thing in terms of attacking that drop coverage. But last night, the Cavs got the shots they wanted. They just down the stretch couldn't make as many of them as Boston did. And that's the difference in going shot for shot in the fourth quarter with DG, Evan Mobley, and Caris Levert as opposed to Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, we talked about on the show. It felt like last night was more of a, all right, the hell with it. Let's just shoot as many threes as we can and hope we can make enough of them to compete. And they almost did. They almost pulled it off. In terms of Darius, you know it's in there. You've seen enough. You know it's in there. And he was on the trajectory a couple years. He was on the U.S. select team. Yeah. Like, that is the best.
That's no joke.
That's the best of the best that play on the U.S. select team. And he just hasn't taken off career-wise like he looked like he was going to his first couple of years in the league. There's just too many knucklehead plays still from him where dribbling too much, jumping in the air with nowhere to go, the 8-second violation in the backcourt. There's just too much of that stuff for a guy who's been in the NBA for 5 years now.
He's talented.
Yeah.
He's frustrating as hell. He is frustrating as hell. And the criticism he's taken this year, I think for the most part has been warranted. I understand he went through the injury. I know his grandma passed away. He had the season from hell on and off the court. But we get paid to analyze what you do on the court. And on the court this year, he did not live up to expectations. Yeah. But it's glimpses like we saw last night, Jayson, that remind you.
It's in there.
The player is still in there. It's just a matter of, can this coaching staff get the most out of him on a night in, night out basis? And that remains to be seen long term. Jayson, we'll take one more super quick break. And this quick break is to remind everybody that tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, we'll be talking about the schedule release. We'll be talking about Game 5. And Tyvis Powell will be doing a special NFL schedule release live stream on the Ultimate Brown Show on this YouTube channel tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So make sure you guys tune into Tyvis on that. Jayson, we're going to show you the world, actually, the debut of my college stand-up from the first playoff game I ever covered between the Celtics and the Cavs from literally a decade ago. But before we do that, LeBron was courtside last night. LeBron's your guy. Real quick, I know we talked about it on the show, but what'd you make out of LeBron actually showing up as a quote-unquote guest of Dan Gilbert to watch the Cavs Game 4 matchup against the Boston Celtics with his wife, Savannah, courtside in what I took as a power play move, but I don't think you see it the same way.
I could not believe he was there. Yeah, a lot of people looking at it as a power play leverage type move. I don't necessarily buy that because he already has all the power he needs. The Lakers have already told him, yes, we'll take Bronny. Yes, we'll give you a max contract, whatever you want. Whatever you want. We'll give you whatever you want if you come back. So there's no negotiation left. Like he won. Mm-hmm. So there's no need to do that. Everything he does is with a motive. Everything he does is with a purpose. I talked to him very briefly on his way out of the arena last night. We talked about Bronny. He was excited about the day Bronny had at the Combine yesterday. Bronny had a very good day at the Combine. And that was really it. So, wait and see. We went in depth on LeBron on the show today, so go back and watch that if you missed it on UCSS. We don't need to rehash the whole thing here. But, I wrote 1,300 words on it, The Athletic, and Donovan and LeBron and how it all ties together and how it all fits together. And whether you like it or not, this very well looks like we're headed for a summer of LeBron part 3.
I'm going to just say this because I know we talked about it enough. I'm going to put, and this may be a little high, and Jayson, you would know better than me. You can feel free to not comment on this if you don't want. But I think there's a 33% chance Donovan Mitchell and LeBron James are teammates next season. I'm not going to say where.
Yeah.
It could be in one or two places. One of them being Cleveland, the other being LA.
It's true.
But I think there's about a 33% chance those two end up as teammates next year.
I'd probably go a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm just saying it is a higher chance than I think I ever could have foreseen myself saying 6 months ago.
Welcome to Cleveland. This is what happens.
It was awesome.
It's just when you think you've seen it all, on or off the court, LeBron does something else that makes you say, oh, my God, I can't believe I just saw that. And LeBron sitting courtside last night, drinking a full bottle of wine.
That was awesome.
Out of a coffee cup at a Cavs game, sitting courtside was another one of those, oh, my God, I can't believe what I just saw moments.
So 2 things real quick. The people who were sitting next to LeBron courtside, obviously you don't know he's coming. Like when you buy those seats, you have no idea that. What do you do if LeBron sits next to you courtside at a game? Like, do you play it cool? Like what? I would love to interview the person who was sitting next to LeBron courtside. Seriously, like what do you do in that situation?
I think he had security with him. He had his security people with him. I don't know that anyone got really close to him. Certainly it looked like the person on the other side of Savannah was just a regular attendee, I think. I'd have to go back and look at it now, but it was Savannah, then LeBron, and then Rich, and then I think there was some security there. So you're not getting terribly close to him. But as I was at the mouth of the tunnel where he would come out, I did hear people sort of in that club just buzzing about how cool it was that he was there, and they got a glimpse of him or, whatever else, and what a surprise it was, obviously, to all those people. But yeah, I'm sure it is a pretty wild experience to be I mean, those aren't cheap seats to begin with,
No.
and to be sitting courtside, and then all of a sudden LeBron and Savannah come and plop down beside you or in front of you or whatever it is. Those people had a memorable night.
In the history of your time covering games at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, where did the ovation for LeBron last night rank on the loudest crowd moments you've heard?
Oh, it was loud, but I've heard that place get a lot louder.
Louder?
Yeah, I've heard it get a lot louder than that for finals games and everything else. But it was loud, and he's blowing kisses to the crowd, and I'm sitting there in my seat shaking my head going, I can't believe this is happening. And, you know, he said on the show today, and it's worth repeating here, LA will never love him like Cleveland. And there's a lot of people in Cleveland that don't like him or are angry that he left the first time and then left again the second time. But he is still, for the most part, beloved and embraced here far more than he ever has been or will be in LA. And I think that's took him by surprise when he went out there. I think he was surprised by how chilly the reception was and the you aren't Kobe and you'll never be Kobe to us type of, you know, reception that he got. I think it took him by surprise a little bit, but he will never be beloved anywhere like he is in Cleveland.
So, Jason, it's ironic that we are now sitting here on May 14th, 2024, because back in some time of May of 2014, we actually crossed paths. I was a rising senior at Emerson College. I was interning for Fox 25 in Boston, and it was the infamous Game 3 game, Cavaliers, Celtics, where Kelly Olynyk ripped Kevin Love's shoulder out.
Yep.
And I was there, and I went into the Cavs locker room, which means you were in the Cavs locker room.
Yep.
And I dug up some footage and found my stand-up from that day. So, Jason, this is the world premiere.
This is amazing.
I must have been, depending on if this was early May or late May, I was either 20 or 21.
Well, this would have been April. This was the first round.
April. Okay, so I was not 21 then. So this is 20-year-old Mike Lucas. There's two stand-ups in here. And you feel free to critique me afterwards because this is rough. I watched it earlier. This is rough. In Game 3 against Cleveland, the Celtics played hard, aggressive basketball in front of a chaotic Garden crowd. But much like Games 1 and 2, Cleveland was a team that played with more poise, and that's why Boston trails in the series 3-0. LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers know how to win in the playoffs. The Celtics, they haven't quite learned that trait just yet. Their next and maybe final chance comes right back here on Sunday at 1 o'clock. 3 against Cleveland. That was tough. It's actually tough to watch, seeing how far I've come on camera, especially in like a reporter role. Since then, it's tenfold. But that hair is atrocious. That tie is atrocious. That must have been my dad's shirt. Like that is. I haven't watched this in years, and I probably shouldn't have done it on air for the first time in a decade. But holy crap!
That is.
You want to watch it one more time?
That is awesome.
The Celtics played hard, aggressive basketball in front of a chaotic Garden crowd.
What was my hair?
Games 1 and 2, Cleveland was a team that played with more poise, and that's why Boston trails in the series 3-0. LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers know how to win in the playoffs. The Celtics, they haven't quite learned that trait just yet. Their next and maybe final chance comes right back here on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Mike Lucas, Fox 25. I had to look.
Now, in your defense, if I went back and read some of the stories I wrote in college, I'm sure they would be just as horrendous. So I'll cut you some slack. But, yeah, it's really funny that we were in the locker room standing next to each other the day that Kevin had his shoulder separated. And here we are 10 years later doing this show together.
Here we are 10 years later talking about LeBron coming back to Cleveland, right? Like all circles lead back to LeBron. Jason, appreciate you as always. That's going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. From current day Mikey McNuggets, from 2014 Mikey McTender, who someone put in the chat. Shout out, there's a great nickname. Let me give a credit. That was Freddie B.
That's
shout
awesome.
Out to Freddie B for McTender, for Jason Lloyd. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. No, I lied. We have a super chat I have to read real quick. Dom Pragma says, Cavs 25 3 points, 5 2-point attempts. 21 minutes left in the game. They took a ton of threes yesterday. So that's going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavs Show. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.